Hey guys, Pete here. So this is going to be a Game of Thrones Season 8 preview. I know Season 7 just ended, but I think it's time to start thinking about some of the bigger questions, where the characters are going to be and what we expect to happen. So this will obviously contain spoilers for everything that happened in Season 7, and if you're not caught up, you won't want to watch it. So I'm going to start off with Jaime Lannister, because one of the big things that happened in Season 7 finale was that Jaime finally left Cersei. The first question is, did he really leave, and is he really going north? And I think the answer to both of those is yes. One of the main reasons why is because in the books, their relationship has fallen apart a ways back now. So it was kind of odd that the show was keeping them together. And I think now it just finally caught up to the idea that, they can't stay together based on the way that she acts. The actor who plays Jaime has said the same thing in interviews. They've been waiting for a moment for a long time. There were so many other times that he could have left. So it's basically saying that that was the natural progression of their relationship. It's also important to note that since Cersei is pregnant, which I think is a true thing, she actually is pregnant, she doesn't really need Jaime anymore. She can build a dynasty on her own, so where do we think Jaime will go? I think he will go north, like I said. He was convinced. He's on a redemption arc all the time, like a permanent one, basically. So this is another chance for him to try to do the right thing. And he was convinced by the display at the Dragon Pit. So he's going to probably go and hook up with Jon and Daenerys up north. This could lead to a coming together of him and Brienne, but I really don't know, because we do have that same kind of thing going on with Brienne and Tormund, so who knows which direction they're going with that. If you're like me and you think that Jaime is the Valonqar who will kill Cersei, I think that's definitely the case in the books. I don't think there's really even another candidate in the books in the way that it's been set up, but the show could do it a different way. They never really mentioned the word Valonqar in Maggie the Frog's prophecy in the show, so that could change. Obviously, like in the books, I don't think Cersei will ever sit on the Iron Throne. I think that's something that Aegon will do, so they're already meshing together these different stories from different characters, so it's possible that he will go back and kill her, and I do think that's what's going to happen in the books, but we can only guess about the show, so we'll see how that goes. The next one is Viserion. He is now a white. That's important to remember. I was reading some stuff that people were talking about, and they weren't really sure if he was a white or a White Walker because the eyes changed. Viserion was dead, so he's raised as a white. He's not a White Walker version of a dragon like, the White Walkers themselves are. We also saw that he was his wings were kind of decayed whenever we saw him flying, so what can we expect from him in Season 8? Well, he's going to do the same thing that he's been doing, and until the other dragons get involved and they have to face him, I think that he'll just be a weapon of mass destruction, just like the regular dragons are. As a white, he may be susceptible to the fire of the other dragons, so we don't really know if he'll be on the front lines, per se, but he could definitely cause some problems. And one of the other things about whites is that in the book, A Game of Thrones, it's mentioned that whites have twice the strength of regular men, so he could be about twice as powerful as the other dragons at this point, if that's consistent across that. So he'll definitely wreak havoc on whoever has to deal with him, that's for sure. Arya and Sansa finally came together at the end, and I think this will stay that way throughout. Sansa as the Lady of Winterfell is kind of in a weird spot, whereas, Bran has this crazy power and Arya can be helpful in that she is a trained assassin. Sansa is kind of just grown into her role as what she's always been raised to be, which is a lady of a great house. So we saw a little bit of foreshadowing of her getting things ready in this season, and I think that's where her role will kind of stay. I mean, with only 6 episodes to come, there's not a whole lot of room for a lot of other stuff, and so if everything's focused on those battles, she'll be maybe just, for the logistics and all that invaluable stuff that has to go on behind the scenes that she can do. Arya is a little bit more interesting, being that she is a faceless man, and we could pretty much assume that she now has Littlefinger's face, so that might come in handy. She also has a nice Valerian steel dagger, so she can be useful in the fight. But as far as what we saw this season with people trying to pull them apart and stuff, I think that's pretty much cemented. They're going to stay together and they're going to be on the same side. The Hound had a really interesting transformation this season, if not a little bit sparse in the amount of what we found out about it. If you remember correct, Sandor basically saw a vision in the flames early on that helped them get to where they were going for the ill-fated Magnificent Seven trip, and it's sort of hard to figure out why they didn't talk about that more later on, but we did get something in the end, and I'm still kind of on the fence about what this actually meant. Whenever he went and got in Gregor's face for the most part, the mountain's face, he said, you know what's coming for you. You know who's coming for you. You've always known. And you could look at that either way. You could look at that as he saw something in the flames that tells him about the mountain's end, or he could be saying the same thing that he's always said, which is that he was going to kill his brother for burning him whenever he was a little kid. So it sounds like, to me, the more I think about it, it sounds more like the Game Bowl scenario will eventually happen. And Joanna Robinson wrote in Vanity Fair yesterday that in an interview, Rory McCann sort of pointed this out as he was saying that the exchange was like, you and me, pal, we haven't finished yet. You're getting it. So that kind of is a thing as well. Otherwise, the Hound is going to do what he's going to do. I'm sure he's a great warrior. This could be added to by his ability to see things in the flames for sure. And it's sort of like the mountain is going to be on Cersei's side in King's Landing, so it's not exactly clear how they'll come back together. Tyrion is an interesting character for Season 8 because when I was looking at comments this morning, I had a lot of people talking about the fact that Tyrion looked really kind of bothered by the whole situation with Jon and Daenerys sleeping together, and they were wondering why that was. Well, there's the obvious reason of him being Daenerys' hand. He doesn't want her to get into any kind of thing that's going to throw her off her plan, and falling in love could be that thing. Then there's less obvious things like he might be jealous. I didn't ever really get a feeling in Season 7 that he was sort of into Daenerys in that way. Obviously most people would be in the context of whatever, but I didn't see that he was playing an angle on that, you know what I mean? Like he was doing his job and he seemed to be looking at her as an employer, not as a romantic interest. And one thing that I read that kind of pointed something that it made it make a little bit of sense though was that you remember back whenever, I guess it's a couple years ago now, it came out that someone had seen the original outline that George R. R. Martin had written down. And a lot of things have changed, so it's not really important except for it just gives you an idea where his head was at when he started the series. In that, Tyrion and Jon were supposed to be in a rivalry over the love of Arya. So they could be switching that out a little bit, using Dany in that place. But it's really hard to guess on that because, you know what I mean, we don't even really know how things are going to go with Dany and Jon, which I'll talk about later, so... The only other thing that kind of backs this up, though, is Peter Dinklage did tell TV Guide before that he basically had feelings for her. So make what you will of that. Overall, I think Tyrion will, he'll do his thing. He'll be a hand the best that he can. And one thing I have been seeing since the finale ended was that maybe he was acting weird because he might have had a deal with Cersei before he left there. That's really, out there. I mean, it's definitely possible. Because they left it open. They didn't show that conversation end. But that's pretty far out there to just speculate wildly on, you know what I mean? There's no other evidence besides him looking weird, so I'll just leave it as an idea, but nothing that really has to back it up. Next we have basically my two favorite characters in the story, Samwell Tarly and Bran. I was very excited to see that they got together at the end of Season 7. And Bran's first thing that's going to be important with him is that he saw the wall come down, so he's going to be able to tell everyone through those ravens that he had scouting around that the Night King is coming. But what I like about this duo together is that Bran was obviously struggling with all this information that he had. And we saw that when he came together with Sam, they were able to sort of focus that natural curiosity that Sam has and has always had. And basically, Bran is a big book when you think about it. So it's not exactly clear how Bran's powers work. I know in the show it was like he said, "Can you see that?" And then he went and saw. Well, like hopefully they actually went to the tree. But either way, Bran is super powerful. He's always been important to the story as far as helping in the end. And I really like the idea that Sam's there with him, able to think about things and put him in the right direction. Theon's always been an interesting character, and he is someone I didn't get to talk about in my recap and review because there was so much other stuff that happened, but it's pretty interesting that they laid his quest of saving his sister because we know that Cersei is counting on Euron to be her ally in her plans of basically screwing everybody else over. So Theon, my thinking about him was that he would always have a way to pay back Jon. And we really got a lot of foreshadowing in that, him talking about Ned and everything else. So I thought maybe that this would be how he would go out, would be doing something that redeemed himself in the eyes of the Starks. And if he could take out Euron and save his sister, that'll be a really big development as far as putting Cersei's mad plans to an end. So I think Theon going off on the side is probably a lot more important than it would appear on the very surface. Now, Cersei is the person who is sitting on the Iron Throne, which is becoming less and less important, especially after Jaime has left. She still has Qyburn and the Mountain, and I don't expect big things from them other than what they've always been doing. She has mentioned bringing the Golden Company into King's Landing. And there's some interesting stuff to think about there. Like in the books, the Golden Company is founded by a Blackfyre, which is a Targaryen bastard. So they've always been looking for a way to get back into Westeros. I don't think there's enough time for them really to go into any of that stuff in the show, but it's possible that that will be a factor in the way things develop over the early part of Season 8 at least. Now, I mentioned that Cersei is okay right now with Jaime leaving on some levels because she's pregnant, but because this is Game of Thrones, I just have a really strong sense that this pregnancy probably won't go as planned. And at that point, I think we could see Cersei make her last stand, which could be really dramatic if you think about it. I mean, she blew up the Sept last time things weren't going her way, so who knows what she's capable of beyond that. I think there's a really good chance that the King's Landing itself may no longer be in existence, let alone the Iron Throne itself whenever Cersei's done with her tenure there, but we'll have to wait and see. And the last of the major characters, and the ones that are on everybody's mind now that they've consummated their relationship, is Jon Snow and his aunt, Daenerys Targaryen. I think the biggest thing that's in Jon's future that we've been anticipating for a while is that he will eventually ride the other dragon, Rhaego. I think everything has been set up from that in the books, for a very long time. I don't see why the show would go away from this. I mean, if you think about it, Rhaego is just kind of hanging out all the time, not really doing much. He's there for the taking from the right person, and Jon has already shown that he can touch Drogon, and there's that connection. So yeah, I think that's coming soon. What's going to go on with this relationship is the big question. I mentioned in the recap and review that it was a little bit weird how they mixed things together with seeing Jon's parents getting together, that's Daenerys' big brother marrying his mother while they were getting together for the first time. And, that might just be a hint to how the relationship might play out between Dany and Jon. What we saw with Rhaegar and Lyanna there in that wedding was that they actually did love each other, but that love led to a huge war that messed everything up in Westeros for years, right? And thousands of people died, so on and so forth. So this could be foreshadowing that Jon and Daenerys is going to have a similar effect on everything. The stars, Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke, both have given quotes saying that, they really wouldn't want to share the power, more or less. That could be a little bit of trickery on their part, but the thing that Kit Harington said was, it could be that they walk off together in the sunset, or it could be that they kill each other, and that is probably about what we know so far. I think the underlying thing with Jon will be the same. He'll want to do the right thing. But we had that foreshadowing with Theon talking about how he can't understand how Jon's always capable of doing the right thing, and how Theon always had this inner conflict between Greyjoy and Stark. Well, now that sets up perfectly the fact that Jon's going to have that exact same problem. He is legitimately a Targaryen, but he was raised as a Stark. So he's going to have that internal conflict, and that's going to be made 10 times more complicated because he's legitimately fallen for Daenerys, and that's who he's in conflict with because of the family line thing. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, they have a common enemy. They have a common goal to save mankind from this threat that's obviously coming. So it's a big deal. We don't really know for sure if they'll end up together or if there'll even be time for that. But I feel like a big part of the beginning of season 8 is going to be this conflict that Jon feels and not really knowing what the right thing to do is for the first time. The Night King himself is pretty straight up. I've been digging into stuff that the showrunners have said about him for some other videos I'm working on, and it's pretty clear that he is an embodiment of evil. Like, he has a very inflexible purpose, and that is to destroy mankind. That's what he was created for in the show canon, and they're not really leaving too much area for shades of gray in his purpose. So I don't think that we need to say anything else about him except for he's going to try to see that goal through, and all of these other characters I just mentioned are going to have to make a decision. Are they going to go against that, or are they going to perish? And it's really going to be that binary by the end. So let me know what you guys think about Season 8, what your early theories are about the season. Make sure you check out some of my other videos. Please like this one if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel. I'll be doing stuff all off season. They're getting ready to film in October, so there'll be a lot of stuff going on at that time. So you'll want to be subscribed and have notifications set so you'll know when those new videos come out. Follow me on Twitter and my other social media accounts. We can interact over there. And thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you soon.